Thousands of people are part of a statement supporting pro-life federal policies, and Hoosiers were among marchers who marked the 40th anniversary of the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision by taking a pilgrimage to the Capitol to lobby Congress.
How's it going out here?
Oh, pretty good. It's cold, but good.
Good. Why are you out here today?
Marching for pro-life.
The 1973 landmark case is remembered by anti-abortion groups annually during the March for Life rally in Washington, D.C. Northern Indiana Region Franciscan Alliance CEO Gene Diamond says the nation's laws against abortion were swept away with Roe v. Wade, and since then, 55 million lives have been lost.
The number of lives lost to abortion in our state and in our region. This is, of course, a catastrophe for both the child and the mother. And so the hope is that if we can change even one heart by this activity, that it will be worth it.
Franciscan Alliance made a 15-hour trek from Hammond just to march with other groups to the Capitol.
You're talking with your senators from Indiana as well as your congressmen from the district. What will you say to them?
Well, the purpose of our visits with the congressmen will be to remind them that they are serving a pro-life constituency, that their constituents are very actively interested in this issue.
After the march, the Franciscan Alliance group talked with staff members of Senators Joe Donnelly and Dan Coates, along with Representative Pete Visclosky.
That they want their congressmen to consider the right to life of all human beings at every stage of life in all of their deliberative decisions, and wherever they can to support the pro-life cause through regulation, through legislation.
Diamond says Franciscan Alliance is specifically concerned about contraceptive mandates and new federal policy requiring employers to make contraceptives available to employees. In Washington, Renetta DuBose, Lakeshore News. U.S. Senator Dan Coates is clear about the economy. Indiana is not the reason why Hoosiers are in a fiscal crisis. The Republican says Indiana must maintain the surplus created by former Governor Mitch Daniels.
I think we're well poised for significant growth based on what has happened in Indiana over the past 8 years. What's holding us back is the fact the federal government needs to get its fiscal house in order. And that affects Northwest Indiana significantly.
Coates says the federal government is spending more money than it's taking in, and congressional leaders must work fast to fix skyrocketing debt.
The big challenge that we have in front of us is a runaway fiscal situation that ultimately is going to result in very bad consequences unless we deal with it. And I think the time is now, not later. We've been pushing this so-called down the road for 2 or 3 years now, watching our ballooning national debt.
In order to survive the financial crisis, Coates encourages families to cut spending in order to match declining salaries until people start working more meaningful jobs where they can provide for their families. Coates says investing dollars in areas like infrastructure can help bring jobs, but those areas are getting squeezed by mandatory runaway federal government spending.
We're not trying to take away Medicare and Social Security or Medicaid. We're trying to save those programs from bankruptcy, trying to save those from going bottom up. And people paid into that, and we don't want to take that away from them.
Senator Coates says major financial challenges for the country in the next few months involve the unresolved debt ceiling, delayed spending cuts, and the budget.
Right now, there's this cloud of uncertainty hanging over our economy. It is keeping people out of work. It's keeping us from growing as fast as we should and getting people back to work and getting income back in the pockets of Hoosiers.
Coates became the senior senator after Joe Donnelly unseated 6th-term Senator Richard Lugar. Coates pledges to work with Donnelly, a Democrat, to best serve Hoosiers. In Washington, Renetta DuBose, Lakeshore News. Congressman Pete Visclosky is back to work in Washington, D.C. after more than 20 town hall meetings in Northwest Indiana. He says 11.8 million people are unemployed across the country, including residents in his district. Visclosky says the answer to employing those out of work lies with the federal government investing in infrastructure projects around the region.
Certainly to work with the city of Gary, for example, on what is now the expansion of the Gary Airport, as opposed to talking about it, but also to make sure the Federal Aviation Administration is pursuing the reauthorization that we passed last year for the highway bill, so that not only can Indianapolis Boulevard Bridge and Gibson Rail Yard be rebuilt, but other infrastructure needs in Northwest Indiana as well.
The passing of the Affordable Care Act and the implementation of the new law were also major concerns to residents at the town hall forums. He says concerned citizens want to know what happens if Indiana state lawmakers decide not to expand Medicaid.
About 386,000 citizens will continue to go without insurance in our state. That is a concern, as well as the establishment of the exchanges for people, again, to have access to health care.
While employment and health talks persist, Visclosky says the best solution to correcting the economy through job creation is to instill trust in everyone.
We owe it to everybody in this country to make some permanent final decisions, and I'm convinced that that would be a serious catalyst to really get the economy going and get some job creation in places like Northwest Indiana.
The next fiscal cliff is approaching. Visclosky says the debt ceiling may now be put off until May. In Washington, Renetta, DuBose, Lakeshore News.